All right, so are you ready to jump into some Thai diplomacy?
Always up for a little diplomatic intrigue.
Well, it's October 9th, 2024,
Uh-huh.
and Prime Minister Paetongtarn Shinawatra, yeah, she's over in Vientiane, Laos for the ASEAN Summit,
Right.
big event, and we've got a whole stack of official releases from the Thai government, press statements, speeches, that kind of thing.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so we're using these to kind of peek behind the curtain and see how Thailand wants to be seen on the world stage right now.
It's fascinating how these official documents can reveal so much about a country's strategy.
Totally. And one thing that jumps out right away is this theme of collective leadership. You see it everywhere. Paetongtarn's really pushing for a more unified ASEAN.
Okay, and how is she framing that?
Well, she keeps hitting these three big ideas: sustainability, human security, and deeper regional integration.
These are pretty standard ASEAN themes, though, right?
Yeah, but she's framing them in a way that feels like more than just, business as usual.
What do you mean?
She talks about building a people-centered ASEAN. It's about recognizing that economic growth isn't enough.
Right. You need social and environmental well-being, too. You can't have one without the others.
Exactly. And, we're seeing the consequences of this more and more these days. Like, think about Typhoon Yane.
Oh, yeah. That was devastating.
Ripped through multiple ASEAN countries, right?
Mm-hmm.
Showed just how interconnected everything is.
And how vulnerable the region is to these kinds of climate disasters.
Exactly. So when Paetongtarn talks about, smart agriculture and disaster preparedness.
It's not just talk, it's about building resilience for the future.
And this seems to tie into another thread I'm seeing, which is this emphasis on neutrality.
Neutrality.
Yeah, like Thailand wants a strong ASEAN, but they're also wary of getting caught in the middle of these global power struggles. U.S., China, all of that.
I see you walking that tightrope.
Exactly. They want to be friends with everyone, basically.
Which is a tricky position to maintain these days.
Totally. And
Yeah.
it gets even trickier when you look at something like the Myanmar crisis.
Right. A major ongoing issue in the region.
Paetongtarn actually brought it up at the summit.
Not surprising given Thailand's proximity to Myanmar.
They're dealing with the fallout firsthand, right? Refugees crossing the border and all the humanitarian challenges that come with that.
It's a stark reminder that these geopolitical issues have very real human consequences.
Sure. And it puts Thailand in a tough spot, right?
How so?
Well, do they engage with the junta, try to influence things from within? Or do they take a harder line risk, further instability, and potentially harm the very people they're trying to help?
There are no easy answers when it comes to Myanmar, that's for sure.
No kidding. So we're seeing Thailand pushing for a strong, unified ASEAN, but also this careful dance of neutrality.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating dynamic to unpack.
Absolutely, and it raises a lot of questions about how they're going to navigate these complex relationships within the region.
Speaking of relationships, let's talk about some of those bilateral meetings Paetongtarn had.
Sure.
Particularly those with the Sultan of Brunei and the Prime Minister of Singapore.
Oh, interesting. These meetings can be very telling.
Right? It's like each one is a strategic chess move. So with Brunei, they hammered out this agreement on halal food cooperation.
Halal food, that seems pretty specific.
It does, but it actually makes a lot of sense when you think about it.
How so?
Well, for one, the global halal food market is huge and growing.
Sure.
And Thailand's got a strong agricultural sector. So this partnership lets them tap into that market.
So it's about economic growth, but it's also strategic positioning within ASEAN.
Exactly. And then you've got Singapore.
Another key player in the region.
Right. Well, it talks about increasing trade and investment. It seems like both countries see an opportunity to deepen their economic ties.
Which makes sense in a world where economic alliances are constantly shifting. It's about solidifying those partnerships.
Exactly. So we're seeing Thailand trying to strengthen its economic ties within ASEAN, all while navigating this whole neutrality thing. It's a balancing act for sure.
It is. And it's not just about government-to-government interactions either.
How so?
Well, Prime Minister Paetongtarn also addressed the ASEAN Inter-Parliamentary Assembly, or AIPA.
AIPA. Right, I'll admit, I'm not as familiar with that part of ASEAN.
It's an interesting one. AIPA brings together parliamentarians from all the ASEAN member states. So it's a platform for dialogue and cooperation on those issues that cross national borders, things like that.
So it's not just about the governments working together. It's about building connections at the parliamentary level, too.
Exactly. And in her address to AIPA, Paetongtarn actually called for a more active role for the assembly, especially when it comes to tackling transnational issues.
Such as?
Things like climate change, cybercrime, drug trafficking, that kind of thing.
So issues that really require a united front to address effectively.
Exactly.
It's interesting that she's pushing for stronger legal frameworks within ASEAN. It suggests that Thailand sees a need for more than just dialogue and cooperation.
Right. It seems like they're pushing for more concrete action, more binding agreements.
Which, as we've been discussing, is no easy feat given the diversity and sometimes conflicting interests within ASEAN.
It's a delicate dance for sure.
Oh.
But it'll be fascinating to see how this all plays out.
Yeah, so you've got these shared challenges, but then this, ASEAN principle of non-interference.
Right. Each country gets to decide what happens within its own borders.
Exactly.
Yes.
So it's tricky, right? Trying to push for these stronger regional agreements while also respecting everyone's sovereignty.
It's a balancing act for sure. And it's interesting to see how Thailand is using its own unique strengths to navigate this.
What do you mean?
Well, think about it. Thailand has a certain kind of, soft power.
Oh, right. The land of smiles.
Exactly. They've got this reputation for being warm and welcoming.
Their culture is hugely influential, right? The food, the music.
All of it. It's a kind of diplomacy in itself.
Winning hearts and minds through pad thai.
Haha, something like that. But seriously, they put a lot of effort into building those people-to-people connections, educational exchanges, cultural programs, that kind of thing.
So it's about more than just, government agreements. It's about building relationships on a deeper level.
Precisely. And I think that gives them a certain credibility when it comes to mediating disputes.
Right, like with the South China Sea.
Exactly. It's such a complex issue, so many countries involved.
And everyone with their own claims and interests.
Right. But Thailand has managed to position itself as this kind of honest broker.
Which isn't easy.
Not at all.
Yeah.
But they've built up that trust over time. And they've hosted talks, encouraged dialogue, tried to find common ground.
So they're not taking sides so much as trying to keep things from boiling over.
Exactly. Preventing conflict through diplomacy and, a little bit of Thai charm.
It's a fascinating strategy to watch unfold, but it makes you wonder, all of this outward-facing diplomacy, this focus on ASEAN, does it have any impact on Thailand itself?
That's a great question, and it's something we should definitely explore.
Because it's all connected, right? What happens on the regional stage must have some kind of effect on Thailand's domestic situation.
Absolutely, and vice versa. The two are inseparable.
It's like this whole other layer to consider, right?
Mm-hmm.
Thailand's role in ASEAN and how that impacts its own internal affairs.
Absolutely, and it's a two-way street. What happens domestically in Thailand can also impact how they engage with ASEAN.
So it's not just about, trade deals and summits. It's about what's happening on the ground for everyday people.
Precisely. And one of the biggest challenges facing Thailand right now is that whole situation in Myanmar.
Right. We talked about the refugee crisis and how that's putting a strain on resources.
Exactly. And there's no easy solution there. It's a complex humanitarian crisis with huge geopolitical ramifications.
And it's dividing people within Thailand too, right?
Absolutely. You've got some who want the government to take a harder line against the junta, others who are pushing for a more humanitarian approach. It's a sensitive issue.
Definitely. So how Thailand handles this domestically will say a lot about their leadership within ASEAN.
Exactly. It's a test of their diplomatic skills for sure.
And it's a reminder that all these things are interconnected, right? What happens in one country doesn't stay in that country.
Especially in a region like Southeast Asia. It's all intertwined.
Exactly. So looking ahead then, what are some of the key things we should be paying attention to when it comes to Thailand and ASEAN?
Well, one big factor is obviously going to be that whole U.S.-China rivalry.
Right, that elephant in the room.
Exactly. It's going to continue to loom large over the region. And Thailand's going to have to navigate that carefully.
Trying to maintain good relations with both superpowers without getting caught in the middle?
Exactly. It's a delicate balancing act.
For sure. So we'll be watching to see how that plays out. Anything else to keep an eye on?
Well, I think climate change is going to continue to be a major issue for the region.
Right. Those typhoons are no joke.
Definitely. And Thailand's been hit hard by climate change in recent years, so I wouldn't be surprised to see them taking a more active role in pushing for regional cooperation on that front.
Makes sense, because it's not something any one country can solve on its own.
Exactly. It's going to take a collective effort. And Thailand seems well-positioned to lead the charge there.
It's been fascinating to really delve into this with you. I feel like I have a much better understanding of Thailand's place in the world now.
Me too. It's such a complex and ever-changing landscape.
It really is. Well, on that note, I think it's time for us to wrap up this deep dive.
Sounds good. Until next time.
That's right. Until next time, keep exploring those fascinating corners of the world, and we'll be here to help you make sense of it all.